So this really is a very rare opportunity. And I don't mean opportunity for you to see me or even for me to be with you, and that is very special for me. But what's rare about this is for you to be with each other. We're connecting all parts of the globe. I looked at the registration list this morning, and there are graduates here from 30 different countries, including Zimbabwe, where it's 7 p.m., India, where it's 10:30 p.m. They have an odd time zone there, and even the Philippines, where it's actually 1 a.m. tomorrow. So some of you are listening and participating from tomorrow, believe it or not. I thought about what I might say to you in the first few minutes that we have here together. And given what's happening globally with COVID, and not just COVID, but the demonstrations that are happening here in the US and elsewhere, including Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations about police abuses of power, it just seemed impossible and wrong not to say something about this today. Especially since yesterday was Juneteenth, June 19th, the calendar date that the slaves in the US were freed in 1865. And today, going on in just a few hours, Trump's going to be doing a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the site of the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. Yesterday, Lauren asked me what I was going to be talking about today in the few minutes I have with you before meditation and our breakouts. And when I told her I needed to say something about what's happening right now, that I decided I didn't care if I was going to be perceived as being political. She said to me, "You're not being political, you're being human." And that touched me, because just a few days ago, I had CNN on, I was watching Rayshard Brooks' family mourning their loss. And I was moved and saddened in a way that I hadn't quite experienced before. I saw him as one of us, part of our community of human beings, a person who deserved to have, everybody has people who love them. Each of us deserve respect and compassion and decency. And my heart broke as I listened to this family share their loss. And I saw Rayshard as a fellow human being, not just as someone who's been had such a terrible thing happen to him and to his family. And I realized that this type of tragedy is not going to be prevented simply with the government legislature or new police policies or another diversity training, that this separating of ourselves into us and other, no matter what the category is just so deep and pervasive. I know some of you have been participating in John Kabat-Zinn's daily meditations and talks. You might have seen him a week ago Friday share some of the books that were helpful to him in understanding the nature of prejudice and racism. And one of the books he showed was this one, Biased by Jennifer Eberhard, which I had on my desk as well. She's a Black psychology prof at Stanford. And I was really struck by something she wrote in the book in the beginning. She tells a story. She's actually telling a story about speaking to 132 members of the Oakland Police Department. But she's telling them about being on an airplane with her 5-year-old son. And when he saw a Black man on the plane, and that was the only Black person beside themselves in the plane, he said, "Mommy, that man looks just like Daddy." And Eberhard says in the book, he didn't look anything like her husband. And she writes in the book, "I couldn't help but be struck by the irony. Here I am, a Black race researcher, having to explain to her Black son that not all Black people look alike." Then a few minutes later, her son says, "Mommy, I hope that man doesn't rob the plane." And her heart, of course, just sank. And I want to read to you what she said after that. She was, of course, very upset. And she said, "Why would you say that?" And she said as gently as she could, she says, you know, Daddy wouldn't rob a plane. He says, yeah, I know. Well, why would you say that? And he said, I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I was thinking that. And here is Eberhard talking to a room full of police officers who had a pretty stone cold presence to her before this moment. And as she's telling the story, she says, here's what she writes, says, there were no longer uniformed police officers. Their eyes had softened. I was no longer a university researcher. We were parents, unable to protect our children from a world that is often bewildering and frightening, a world that influences them so profoundly and so insidiously and so unconsciously that they and we don't know why we think the way we do. And she says, with heavy heart, I continue my point. We're living with such severe racial stratification that even a 5-year-old can tell us what's supposed to happen next based on his conditioning. Even with no malice, no hatred, the Black and Crime Association made its way into the mind of my 5-year-old son, into all of our children, into all of us. And what's being called systemic racism is actually worse than that, worse than how our traditional understanding of what that might mean is. Of course, that exists in the traditional sense, but prejudice is so pervasive that people who don't believe they're prejudiced they've absorbed the values of the surrounding culture. Even those very people like Eberhard's 5-year-old son who were discriminated against and dehumanized. I remember my friend Jules, who does a lot of activist work in the DC area, telling me about a workshop he participated last year in which the leader called her out, singled her out, and said, you've benefited from white privilege for your entire life, and you care nothing about Black people. You care nothing about people of color. And when Jules told me that, I was astounded. It seemed so unfair because she is the most active person I know in supporting the rights of Blacks and Latinos. She's gotten arrested more than once recently for protesting the streets of DC. You know what she said to me? She said, well, it was uncomfortable. And I was mad at first for being characterized that way, based only on the color of my skin. And then I realized that for me, it was a weekend of discomfort, but for a person of color, it's a lifetime. In my conversation with Jules, I wondered if I was doing enough. Here she is, protesting on the streets, participating in many meetings and working with immigrants and people of color. And I looked at what I was doing. I make financial contributions, but compared to Jules, it seemed like I wasn't doing much. And I wondered, did I need to do more? And she told me that I should continue my work with Palouse Mindfulness. That's where my energy and my heart was. And I'd find opportunities in that context. And I realized when she said that I had just a few days before started a conversation with another Palouse Mindfulness graduate, Rosie Harris, who probably is here somewhere from London, who offered to help me find videos and writings of mindfulness teachers who happen to be people of color. And as of this moment, there aren't any. All the videos happen on the side are of white people. Of course, very inspiring and wonderful talks and meditations, but nothing from people of color. So she found some terrific resources, and over the next few months, I'll be adding them to those materials. And I've been excited by what she's found and happy that these don't just add some sort of token diversity, but they're additions of real substance and add to the substance of the course and the depth of the course, irrespective of the ethnicity of the teachers. And so I share this just to say that no matter where you are and what you're doing, just having in mind that things can be different, that you can be doing something, you'll find opportunities in your own realm. And for me, this probably still not enough. But if we, and I mean especially those of us who are white and privileged, recognize our unconscious complicity, it's not out of ill will, and the injustice that's all around us, and we can do something within our sphere of influence. If we each did that, if enough of us did that, even if a few of us did that, the world could change. Before we move into small groups, we'll begin with meditation. And I usually do for the graduate meetings a themed meditation and kind of guide you along the meditation to be reflecting in that theme. But somehow it feels like doing that wouldn't allow enough space for whatever's coming up for you now. It may not be what we just talked about. And any imposition of my idea of what you should be thinking about in your meditation seems presumptuous. So we'll just do a breath meditation. Or after I do the guided part, the last part will be silent. The last 8 or 9 minutes or so will be silent. And in those moments, before and after we move into silence, I invite you just be with your own experience, whatever that is. And seeing if you can, in the way that we've been trained to do in the MBSR course, to do that with gentleness and kindness toward yourself, whatever comes up. So as you sit there, just make yourself comfortable. And however you're sitting or laying, or whatever your posture may be, just bring into awareness how it is to be here now, to be here with yourself. To be here physically. Taking into your awareness the physical realities, the physical sensations of sitting here, how your feet or your legs are making contact with the floor or the couch, wherever you're sitting on. How your arms are resting along in your lap or wherever they're resting. And as you check in with your body, recognize that you're not only receiving information from your body about where you are right now physically, but you're also kind of laying a gentle hand, laying a gentle touch on those parts of your body you're paying attention to. You're saying hello, you know they're there. You appreciate having them there, acknowledge their being there. It's really a two-way street. And as you sit there, bring awareness to your breath, wherever you might feel that most vividly. Be your chest or your belly or your throat or your nostrils. In this type of meditation, we don't try to force our breath to be any certain way, but just bring awareness to breath. That's enough. Because you're breathing just fine now. It's kept you alive for all your life, and it continues to do that. All we need to do is pay attention to it. Feeling this breath. Really feeling it in terms of sensation. The movement of an intake, as breath comes in, how it changes to an out breath without you even having to do anything about it. There's a wonderful thing about breath is we don't need to control it. You can just be with it. by paying this kind of attention to it, it settles down by itself. The rest of the meditation will be silent. I'll end it with the sound of the chimes. And you can make it whatever kind of meditation you want it to be. If you prefer it not to be a breath meditation, want to have it be a mantra or a centering prayer or some other kind of meditation, that's perfectly fine. Just make it yours. The next 10 minutes or so will be yours. Be completely silent until I ring the bell. we have some time left. We've got just a few minutes now for Q&A, so we may be able to answer a question or two or receive a comment you may want to share with the whole group. I want to honor the time so that 1/2 will formally end the meeting, but I'll stick around for other questions and that comments that people want to make after the meeting. So we'll let it wind down slowly after we all say our goodbyes for those who want to stay after. So Lauren, I don't see any.
Nobody has
Yeah.
a hand raised yet.
Yeah, so let's give people a chance. If you have a question or want to make a comment you'd like to share with the whole group, now it's time. I see Arlene's got her hand up.
Okay. Arlene, if you would unmute yourself.
Okay. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment, Dave, on what you'd said about doing something about anti-racism and mindfulness. And, I grew up completely white. I bet between, from birth to finishing high school, 99.99% of the people I knew were white. And I never considered myself a racist, but I knew I had reactions sometimes to people. If I got cut off in traffic and the person was a different color, I had a different reaction. And I think I'd notice it, I'd be horrified by it. And I'd think, well, that's evidence that I'm not a racist. But recently, not in the last few weeks, but about a year ago, I thought, well, I was raised completely white. Like it must have impacted me.
Yeah.
And so I sat with what I had learned. And my dad, I was raised in the 50s. My dad had pretty derogatory terms that would be considered horrid right now, but were normal back then. But from my mom, I learned this subtle us and them, and my mom would have not have wanted this, but a sense of grandiosity. Like often when there's us and them, there's someone up and someone down. And as I sat with that, first I felt so ashamed. And that just, it carried me away, but I had some mindfulness, And then this great sorrow of having contributed. And then I got kind of angry, like, well, I didn't know, and then that passed. And then, I brought some compassion to all of that. And I ended with just sort of feeling grateful.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit scared of my own racism. What will I find if I look in? But I'm grateful that I could see it. I think Moshe Feldenkrais said, you can't do what you want unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I was very grateful that I could see it. And it did actually shift some things in my interactions with people of color. And so I wanted to offer that to you because mindfulness offered so generously to so many people. I think it's the essential piece of changing our attitudes.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't really address directly is how does mindfulness relate to this?
Yeah.
And it's really key. What you say is the awareness that we do have judgments and prejudices about nearly everybody and nearly every group. Nobody's exempt. And in fact, there's another really wonderful book called Blind Spot, is the hidden biases of good people. And I love that she has that right in the cover, hidden biases of good people. Hidden, we don't know about them, not many of us. And we're not, it doesn't come from most of us from a negative a place where we want to be hurtful to other people, but it's there. And even she writes, it's one of the co-authors is Mahzarin Banaji, and she's of Asian descent. And she writes when she does the implicit association test that she and her co-author created, where biases come out, the unconscious biases we have. She took it herself and discovered she had negative biases against her own race. It's there. It's the air we breathe. And so mindfulness is the way we have some chance to know what it is. And I love that you can be grateful about knowing that, because that gives us a chance to work with it. And that's the one avenue that we've got. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Arlene.
Well, and what you said about bias against our own race. My niece said to me, oh, white people are the scourge of the earth. And I thought, yeah, that's probably true, But we're born of color, right?
Yeah.
And I think now is the time of awakening. I mean, it's horrible times, but I think it will be our salvation, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, Arlene. And Lauren, I see a question from
Yeah,
Shashir.
there are three hands up.
Let's take Shashir's.
Okay. All right, Shashir, I'm going to spotlight you, and if you would unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Dave.
Hi,
Thank you
Shashir.
so much for the sessions today. I've had like a not such a great week, but this may be the turning point. So thank you so much. Just from the discussion that we were just having, there's a very nice saying somewhere in Hindi, which is that um, when I went outside to see what's bad, I thought I might as well start with myself. And when I started with myself, I realized I couldn't end.
Yeah.
And probably sort of that's part of the discussion, that we just pointed everything inwards. We realize that there's so much bias that we carry in so many things. And 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 I was just struck by something you said before, which is also a question. You mentioned before the breakout that we shouldn't be we should be exceptionally critical when we have like an advice to give, when we really know this is the right advice, and then is definitely the time when we shouldn't give it. So how really does one react when I see, say, in my house or something that's not going right, or something that I need to or I want to give an advice in for it to become better? One of the guiding principles I had was that if it's coming out of a place of love and not out of frustration, then maybe that's the right thing to do. But even then, it's sometimes difficult to separate out what my biased judgment is towards what the other person is doing and what's actually meant as well for them or good for them.
Yeah.
So just I don't know how to really handle those situations, especially when they happen around me. When I see somebody is not reacting the way which may be good for them and maybe for the overall peace, and I get in that zone where I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to do. I mean, if the guidance is never to say anything about or communicate anything that's bothering you, that doesn't work very well, does it? You know.
Yeah, correct.
So you may need to say something. So the question, how do you do that? How do you do that in a way that's respectful of the person that you're having difficulty with? And that's a whole other very deep subject. And if you go to week 6 and look at some of the resources there, the best and most comprehensive resource is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And in it, he says, the most important part, if there's something difficult, is you don't start with, here's why I'm having a difficulty. You start with, where are they coming from? What is it they're feeling? What is it they're saying? What is it that they're believing? That's first. Then you can share what's true for you, how it's affecting you. And it's not what they've done that's bad, it's just, but here's what happens in me. And after you've shared what happens in them, what happens in you, then something may come out of it. And it's really a very, very complex and deep subject, but Marshall Rosenberg probably does the best job of codifying a way to do that I know of. He's got his primary book on nonviolent communication is one to take a look at. It's really a lifetime's work.
But there are also those instances when it may not be affecting me at all, but I can see it affecting them in ways in which they are unable to realize. In that case, is it sort of okay for them to learn from their own experience, not fiddling with the process, or just that's where I sort of fall short of whether.
Yeah, well, if you see something that you think would be good advice for somebody else, it's hard to know how to give that in a way that would be welcome. So I would still direct you to that book because it gives some guidance about that. But what's most important is to acknowledge that that's the place it's coming from, if that's where it's coming from. Say when you may even say, I really find myself wanting to give you advice, and I know people don't want to hear advice, and I don't know what to do with that. So here's what's going through my head, and now it's not I'm giving you advice. It's you dealing with your own reaction to it. That's sometimes a little easier to accept. But I would take a close look at that. He does a much better job of explaining how that works, and it's a really kind of a magical process. And like I said, it's a life sport. And
Will
it's
do.
not an easy question. You're not alone. Somebody see something is going a little bit wrong. You want to help. It comes from a place of help. So how to do that in a way that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dave. Just one last thing.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is also International Yoga Day.
Ah,
And something that often gets missed is actually yoga has its genesis in meditation rather than physical exercise.
Yeah.
So in the scheme of that also, it's really nicely timed your session today. So thank you so much again
well, you're
for
welcome.
that.
Yeah, and we do understand the West is yoga about moving physically, but yoga, it means bringing together, doesn't it?
It is about
Everything,
unification.
everything.
Unification. Yeah.
Yeah, emotional, spiritual, everything, not just body. So thank you for that.
Okay, Dave. Chip has asked to ask a question, can't find the hand raise. So Chip, why don't you go ahead? And Chip, unmute yourself.
There
No.
we are.
Are you there?
I am. Thank you. I used to seeing a little icon there at the bottom with a hand, but it just isn't there. So I'm handless.
Yeah, you have to.
I have this hand.
Chip, it's probably put in the 3 dots. So you can see
Oh, okay.
go slower, so it's there. Yeah.
All right. Maybe so.
That's
Anyway,
okay.
here I
Chip,
am.
don't
Good to
worry
see
about
you.
it. Just go ahead.
Wonderful to see you. Thanks for this. What a wonderful experience. It is interesting to me as I speak from the absolute bowels of the Black Belt in the Deep South. I'm in Auburn, Alabama, where it's easy to be surrounded with a lot of things, not the least of which is both racial prejudice of an extraordinary kind and COVID of an open and flagrant kind, since this is a state that's a hot center state. It's turning redder in both ways by every minute. And hospitals are filling up again as soon as everyone relaxed. They weren't very strict, but they did relax, and everyone came out again unmasked intentionally as a way of showing something. I'm not sure what. So it is an afflictive place, and at the same time, there has been I'm sort of reporting from the field. There's a transformative shift going on. And I attribute it in many ways to the millennial generation, but I also attribute it to something that unfortunately is far too common and extraordinarily horrendous. And that was the recent killing by the police of the man in Atlanta, which is just up the road and is my original hometown. And is a city that has been remarkable for its lack of that sort of thing through many decades of racial distress in the South. But in that happening and going across the world, billions of views of that around the world is sort of a, for lack of a better term, a lynching in public in the eyes of many. And it hasn't transformed this part of the world with a sweeping, eye-opening transformation, but it has moved people. It was just horrendous enough and visible enough to cause a shift. And I'm in a place where you don't see a lot of shift.
Yeah.
I'm a realist about that. And it's made us reflect deeply. In our chat room, we talked about it some, and I was saying that what I've seen in my own meditation, my own reflections on this, everyone, is that, and I'm a product of the Deep South, and of the 50s and 60s. And regardless of your intentions, regardless of your aspirations, regardless of your conscious political, racial stance, or your own best wishes about yourself and your own behavior. As a mentor of mine told me in the 60s when we were involved in civil rights work about racial prejudice and bigotry and view. He said, Chip, we all have it. It's in the water down here. It's in the air. It's under your feet in the red clay. And I was too young. I didn't deny what he said, but I didn't pay close enough attention, but I never forgot it. And with the meditative practice, I began looking at and following Thich Nhat Hanh's instructions. Is it true? Whatever arises, is it true? Is this real? And it's true. Things arise in someone who's grown up in the Deep South for no apparent reason, that have distinct and clear racial bias, if not prejudice and bigotry in them. When you may be the kindest person, or you may even be, you may be married to a person of color, whatever it may be, it still arises. So the task becomes, the kind of work that we do in meditation, the task becomes, and this too, and this too. So there you are, my old friend. I know you. Yeah, I know you. You stood on the sidelines when you could have been in the game. I know you. No shame, no blame, but I know you. And just the knowing of that it resides somewhere in my seed conscious has given me a great deal of freedom. But more than that, without regard to making judgment about how aware or not aware someone may be, I can see this shift around me of people who they're not breaking. They may not even be awakening, but they're softening.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, yeah. That could be my brother. That could be my kid. And it really is happening, and it's palpable. And in a place where it's very easy to just be hopeless.
Thanks so much for being those eyes and ears in the field where you are, because it gives me some hope, that if you can feel it there, that maybe it is real. Well, it is real. It is real. The hope and the softening, I think that's real. And my hope is that it continues and it grows, so that this can be a time of potential healing for those of us who've been swimming in this water and breathing the air that has the prejudice in it. It's not personalized. It's in the air, but the air can be cleansed if there's enough of us that wake up to it, wake up to our own impressions, our own judgments.
Dave, if you want to hear it out loud, I don't know if you know, or if everyone knows Dharma Seed, the app Dharma Seed, which is Insight Meditation Society's app. There's a talk on June the 17th that Tara Brock gave. And that talk is called Sustaining Our Caring. And at the very end of that talk, a young man of color in the question and discussion period has a piece there that just cannot go unlistened. So it's only, the whole thing doesn't last 20, 30 minutes, but right at the end when she takes questions, this young man speaks everything from the side of a young man of color that I'm talking about, and about how he sees white people. And I've got to tell you, I'm not a salesman, but it's worth everybody taking a listen to that.
I'll take that lead, and I will find the Tara Brock's talk on June 17th, and I'll create a link for people.
Just saying, it fits what we're all talking about today. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I just made a note to do that, so that when the notes come out, it'll have a link to that. Thank you.
Great,
for that.
great. Good.
Chip, good seeing you. We'll talk again later.
We have much to talk about. I'm going to have to go. I've got a brother who's ill, and I've got to go take care of him. But Dave, thank you very much. Thank you. You're a wonderful man. Thank you very much.
Bye, Chip.
Bye-bye. Bye, all.